Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, this is Mr. Schwartz, and after the longest time in the history of long, I am back with another How to Draw video for Mr. Schwartz's Art Hour, and today we are going to help finish up the Avatar The Last Airbender series of videos with that tea drinker of wisdom himself, Uncle Iroh. Meet me on the other side of this scene transition, and let's get ourselves started, shall we? Alright, ladies and gentlemen, so to draw Uncle Iroh, we're going to start off with a circle as we normally have before. If you remember all the way back when I used to post content and just make it a very simple, quick circle, doesn't have to be anything spectacular. Then what we're going to do is, Iroh's going to be looking this way, to the right. So we're going to draw the middle of his head slightly to the right of that circle. What we're then going to do is down here, for the second part of his face, we're actually going to draw a flatter shape to help represent the bottom of his face, because Iroh has a different face shape than what we're used to drawing when it comes to characters like Toph or Aang or Sokka. He's much more mature, and he's much more wise, and he's much older, so as a result, his face is a little bit different. So, with this shape down here at the bottom, what we're going to do now is divide his face at roundabouts the middle of your shape. Always leave room up here for the forehead, and always leave room down here for the chin and the nose and the other features. Now, when it comes to drawing his nose, I'm going to zoom in just a little bit so you can see a little bit more clearly. So, ladies and gentlemen, having taken a look at the piece as a whole, I've decided that the eye over on the right would look a little bit better if I stretched it out just a little bit more. Just gave it a little bit more room to breathe. And move the eye accordingly. Once again, there's nothing wrong with doing this. And I don't mind at all showing you that I make mistakes too, or that I need to make adjustments. That makes me human. That makes me a fairly typical artist. So I think that helps out just a little bit more. Always making sure that Iroh keeps that nice bright shine in his eyes. Never lets that spark go out. That's why Iroh is so awesome. Okay, so now that I've let my little artistic OCD get the better of me, let's move on. So we're going to do the top of the Iroh's head now. So I'm going to begin by taking the drawing as I see it here and making a base rough outline of how big I think the rest of the head should be. Keeping in mind that the whole head needs to be evenly split between down here and up here. So if I take a look, I can see that keeping the measurements roughly equal, there we go, that's a little bit better. So for his nose, as opposed to the other noses that we've drawn in the Avatar series, his nose is not going to be just basically a check mark shape. What we're actually going to do is draw the beginning part of the nose as angling downwards towards the bottom right, only a short space away from the eyeline here. Then what I'm going to do is actually draw a circle here, a very light circle. So it's going to look like we're going to give him like a Rudolph nose or a clown nose, but the reason that I draw this is because the bottom part of his nose is actually fairly realistic in terms of how it's drawn. Because the bottom part of your nose here is always represented best with a ball shape to get the correct shape for it. So once I've drawn this quick little circle shape here, what I can then do is come to the side of the circle and draw in a little bit heavier the right side of it. This is going to represent the side of Iroh's nose. And if it makes it easier for you, you can then erase this part here. The reason that I drew that circle is so you could get a clear look as to what actual shape I was going for here and have a good reference point. Make that a little bit more rounded. Now up here for his nose is actually crooked. So what we need to do is take this basic line that we have angling downwards, bring it up, and then slant it in, and then swing it back out slightly above the eye level. This will give Iroh, going to make that a little bit longer, this will give Iroh that trademark shape to his nose. Noticing those key features about a character that makes them unique and different from everyone around them is going to be ideal in your quest to learn to draw your favorite characters from your favorite shows. What we can then do now is draw the other sides of his nose, because he actually has rather pronounced nostrils. On the right side here, considering that this nostril is going to be hidden behind the ball of his nose, all we will need to do is draw a half rainbow shape right here, leaving room up at the top of the nose. Then over on this side, if you remember where we had the ball of the nose, we cannot have the nostril be anywhere inside this shape, because that would make his nose appear very lopsided and misshapen. So we actually need to draw the opening of the nostril past where the ball ended, and then a ways past the nostril here, we will draw the nice big side of it. This nostril is basically going to go all the way up to where the ball of the nose was here. Again, if you take a look and maybe you decide that perhaps this is a little bit too sloped and maybe it needs to be a bit more rounded, never be afraid to pull out your trusty eraser. By the way, some of you have been asking, this is actually a kneaded rubber eraser. It's a special kind that can be pulled apart and remolded together to fit into whatever shape and size that you want it to be. These are available at Hobby Lobby, Michaels, Joann Fabrics, anywhere that really sells erasers. You'll traditionally be able to find a square of these, and I'd recommend picking one up. It's my tool of choice. So we have Iroh's nose here, and once again, his nose is really not that far away from his eyes, so make sure that you didn't draw his nose too long. Leave room down here for his mouth and for his chin. So let's get to drawing these eyes. So I'm going to take my eraser, flatten it out, and very lightly erase that line. So I can still see it, but now when I'm drawing the next shape, it won't be too difficult to see with all those lines going everywhere. So basically, if you were to draw a line going straight up from the side of the nostrils, then what you will find is that this, where this line meets the line for the eyes, is actually where Iroh's eye will start. It never starts further in for Iroh. This is actually realistic to a real person's eyes as well. If you were to take a pencil or draw a straight line from your nostril straight up, you will hit the inside of your eyelid. Not eyelid, the inside of your eye. So what we need to do is draw Iroh's eyes. Now his eyes have a very particular shape to them. They're almost never wide-eyed. He's very wise. He has a very calm and peaceful look on his face a lot of the time. So what we need to do is we're going to draw a fairly typical anime eye to start with. We're going to draw a line that slopes around and curves. Make sure it curves, that's very important. Curves around until it's roughly about this distance away from Iroh's nose. If it helps you to draw things like this, then go for it. But traditionally what I will just do is eyeball things. What we can then do is you'll want to draw a slanting shape on the other side here. And now to draw the bottom part of it, Iroh always has a very happy look on his face. His eyes always look like they're smiling. And the way that they do that is the bottom part of the eye, instead of going straight and flat, is actually going to curve along with the top of the eye. Now looking at it, I can already tell this part is curving too far down. It's going to make him look more angry. So what I will want to do is curve it so it ends further up here. Slanting something down further is going to make it always look more angry, unless you supplement it with other shapes of the face. Now what we can do is then come over to this side here, and this eye needs to be drawn at fairly the same level as the previous one. The only difference is it's going to be ever so slightly smaller. So make sure that it ends before you reach the side of the head here. And draw the slanting part that slants back towards the middle of the face. And draw the bottom curve of the eye. So we'll clean that up. Okay, and grab that out of there as well. So what we have now is we have a eyeless Iroh who looks rather terrifying, but before we put in the eyes, we're going to actually take the section over here and actually thicken it out by swooping the connection between the bottom of the eyelid and up to the top. This will, when done on both sides, will give him the appearance of having eyelashes, which he actually does. This looks girly, but if you look in the show, he actually has fairly heavy eyelashes on the sides of his eyes. Now we're going to actually draw his eyes. So I'm going to zoom in even further so you can get a closer look at how that's actually going to work. Okay, my apologies, ladies and gentlemen. That is as close as I can get it. So, to draw his actual eyeballs, what we're going to do is we're going to have him looking ever so slightly this way, since his head is turned that way. So, when we draw the sides of the eye, don't have them curve a whole awful lot. If you give them more of a slanted appearance, more of a straight appearance, they will look much more like his eyes are in a very relaxed state, and so his eyelids are covering a good portion of his eyes. And we'll do the same over here. You can see I left a little bit more space over here than I did here. That means that over on this side, I need to leave a little bit more space over here than I do here. Just like that. And then to draw the detail of the eye, so he's not just a pale-eyed ghost creepy person, we will draw the shine on the right side of both eyes, and around that shine we'll draw a larger circle that reaches the top and bottom of your eye shape. We can color that in, and then we can lightly shade around it. And then what we can also do is, if he's looking a little bit too alert still and you want him to look more calm and relaxed, you can take the top part of the eyelid and just shade it heavier and shade it further down onto the eye. The more you shade down onto the eye, the more relaxed in appearance Iroh will become. So that looks pretty good for now. It doesn't look quite like Iroh, but that's because we need to get everything else done first. So, we're going to move down here now to the rest of the face. Okay, so down here, we're going to start off by drawing his mouth, and then we will draw the actual bottom shape of Iroh's face. So what we can do is, midway between the nose and the bottom of the head shape that we have, is going to be his mouth. His mouth, unlike a lot of the other characters, is quite long. It extends all the way over to basically the side of his eye over here. So when you're about to reach the eye, have the mouth curve upwards just a little bit, give him that little hook on the side of his mouth. And over on the right side, have the mouth go to about the middle of the eye. If you were to draw a line from here to here. And we can end it with a little hook just like on the other side. Now, to continue making him look even more like Iroh, let's draw the actual bottom part of his face. So, a good way to do this is to, once again, we know Iroh has that unique beard shape to his face, but we do not want to draw that yet. What we want to do is draw everything around it first in a basic shape for it so that we have a good foundation to go off of when we actually start building up the beard. So, we're going to start by having Iroh's head and about here. It's not going to go all the way out to this basic shape that I had before, based on the shape of the eyes that I have now. So, we will then have the head curve outwards for the cheekbone before it curves back in and down around. And when it reaches the other side of the mouth, that's when it will start to curve back upwards until we reach about here. So with this shape in mind, once again, it doesn't look a lot like Iroh, but now we're going to start adding in the details that is going to help solidify this character as looking as we know that how he should. So we can begin by coming up here, and right below the eyes, we can draw another line that follows the same curve as the bottom of the eye that we drew. This is to give him more of an aged appearance. A good tip is the more lines you put on a character's face ages them per line. So if you think about it that way, the more lines you put on a character, the older they're going to look. He also has fairly distinctive bags under his eyes that start right below the first line, swoop down, over and around, much like so. Now that's a little bit too wide. It swung out a bit too far, so I'm going to rein that back in. There we are, that looks much better. And we can do the same over here, just like so. Now that we have taken care of those two details, we'll now come down to the chin, and a decent ways below the mouth, we can draw the bottom of his lip. And his lip is going to extend over, start to curve up, and then stop. It stops before it reaches the edge of the mouth, wherever that may be. Clean that up a little bit. Now from this bottom part of his lip is actually where the middle part of his beard is going to go. Now I'm going to show you how to draw him how he appeared in the first season of Avatar, and then I will redraw his beard and hair to show you how he looked in the second and third seasons of Avatar. So, new angle, had to readjust. So to draw his goatee part of his beard, we're going to draw a line that starts slightly inside the bottom of the lip, and it will extend down, 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 till about here. There you go, now you can see that. I'm a little out of practice, ladies and gentlemen, sorry about that. Anyway, what we can then do is I'm going to just basically swing it around until it curves back up, much like this. So this is a very odd looking shape right now. It looks like a tongue if his lip wasn't up here. So let's make it look like a beard now. Now that we have this basic shape down here, I can then come in and drop a few spikes into the bottom part of his beard. That will help make the bottom of the shape look correct. And now what we can do is up on this part of the beard here, when it re-enters his face, it's going to attach onto it via a series of additional spikes that will curve around and finish things off. Now mine looks to be a little bit too long. Yours might be the exact right size, and if it is, that's fantastic. And now what we can do, now that we have the beard done, is we can come to the sides and do the massive parts of his beard. So over on the right side here, beard is going to start at just below where the nose line would be on the side of Iroh's face. And it will curve down until it reaches about where the bottom of the chin will be. Then it can start coming back in and have a few spikes separating it before it enters into the part of the head where the chin is at. And now that we have that part taken care of, we can now come to this line here and redraw it ever so slightly. Using that as a reference line, we can now say that the beard will swoop up into his face, then will curve back out until it hits that line of the face, and then from there it curves and angles upwards till we reach about here. We'll go down into a spike to make that sort of semi-beard shape that Iroh had, before it ends by merging back into the cheek shape that we had before. So here is the basic line that we had to begin with, and here's the line that we drew using this as a reference. What we can then do is now come over to this side, and we will start by drawing the inside of the beard, because to draw the rest of this, we'll need to draw the remainder of the head. And we're going to get to that here very shortly. So what we'll do is we will come to the chin line, and we're actually going to draw the chin and leave it as it is until we reach about where the end of the mouth is here, in which case we'll start to curve up, and then we just end up following the shape that we have over here. We want to make the side over here look like it matches pretty well with the side over on the right. This side is going to go a little bit further up because Iroh is facing that way. And then it's going to start swooping upwards, and then that's where I'm basically going to stop it for now. So down here, we can finish off the rest of the beard down here. And it will start right where the chin began to swoop upwards. And it's going to move out. And then the spikes will begin. Now the number of spikes and how big they are is going to be largely up to your own interpretation. You can follow mine exactly, or you can invent your own way that they move. The point being that the spikes need to move in a flowing motion outwards. And then as it's moving upwards towards the head, I will draw a small spike outwards to give it just a little bit more depth and character. What we'll now do is move up to the upper portion of his head to finish things off. So we're going to do the top of the Iroh's head now. So I'm going to begin by taking the drawing as I see it here and making a base rough outline of how big I think the rest of the head should be. Keeping in mind that the whole head needs to be evenly split between down here and up here. So if I take a look, I can see that keeping the measurement roughly equal. Okay, so we're keeping the shape of the head fairly round, making sure that no part of it is super flat. While at the same time you don't want it to be too curved either. And you want to also make sure that you draw the side of the head as it moves around to the back on the left, that you give the back of his head room. Something that a lot of beginners will make the mistake of doing is not giving the head enough space when it reaches the back of it. You always need to make sure that you have enough space back here to make the character look like they actually have a back to their head. So we'll clean that up a little bit so you can see a little bit better exactly what shape I'm working with here. Okay, so here's the basic shape that we have now. So we now need to draw Iroh's rather characterful eyebrows. And his eyebrows are going to be set fairly high up on his head. They're going to be set up all the way up here. And his eyebrows are not just going to be straight across or even just going one direction. They're actually going to slope upwards. Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. I'm actually recording this up at school, and so people keep coming in and talk to me. Anyway, so we're going to have this eyebrow curve around and then swoop back downwards. It's going to swoop at a nice curve until it reaches basically a little bit below where it initially started, right over here. And then when we draw the rest of the eyebrow, it's very thin up at the beginning, gets much wider when it reaches up and over, and then when it's at about the same spot here to here, as in if you drew a straight line they would meet, now we will use a series of little spikes to finish off the eyebrow. We can do the same over on this side, with the difference being that this one will ever so slightly go right off the side of Uncle Iroh's head. He does have quite bushy eyebrows, this man. Also, a quick side note, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to lengthen out Iroh's eyes here. Looking at the overall shape of his whole head and the size of everything, I do think that I made these a little bit too small. And I feel that by lengthening them, just simply stretching out the side over here, we get a much more Iroh looking face overall. That already looks much more like good old Uncle Iroh. I will also stretch out the side of the eye over here. So it makes it look a little bit messier, but I think you get the idea. You get the idea that Iroh's eyes need to be a little bit wider than I was making them. And also a little bit thicker on the top here. It's a little bit more pointed over on the side. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, never be afraid to do little readjustments like this. It doesn't mean you're a terrible artist, it means you're a human being, just like old Mr. S. Anyway, now that that is done, let's go ahead and move back up to the top of the head here. So, to finish off the whole rest of the head here, what we're going to do is come to the top of the eyebrow, and we're going to readjust this shape over on the side of his head just a little bit from the looks of things. We need to make this part of his head have a little bit more of a curvature to it, instead of just going straight up and down. Redrawing this makes this part of his head have a little bit more sense to it. What we can now do is very lightly erase this top part of his head, come to the upper part of his head over here right after the eyebrow, and we're actually going to draw until we get to about here, and then have a nice long line that goes across his head and curves downwards. This will give the appearance of having wrinkles on his head, which again will contribute to Iroh looking like a much older character, as he's supposed to. What we can then do is now come slightly inside of that first wrinkle and draw the rest of his head shape, come up to about here, and then we're going to do that same thing again. Have a wrinkle curve and swoop over. Make sure it swings up enough that we can have a nice curve downwards. And then we'll finish things off by coming even further in and drawing the rest of his head shape, which will meet with what we drew previously. And so now what we can do, ladies and gentlemen, is we're going to actually draw the rest of Iroh's head over on this side, and then I'm going to show you how to make his little top knot. So what we're going to do now, ladies and gentlemen, is come down here to where we had the beard line stop previously, and now we're going to have that curve around. And from the looks of things, it should not curve over like it is. It should go more or less straight down. So what we need to do is just come back and reestablish how that line moves. So it makes a little bit more sense, gives him a little bit more room on the side of his face. Then once we reach about the middle of the eyebrow right here, we will curve it back and then have it curve up and around until it meets the line for the top of the head. So let me clear things up here for you. To draw the rest of his head over on this side, what we will do is we'll take this line, which was actually just the basic shape of the head that we started with, and get rid of that. We will have the beard line swoop upwards, much like this, because this, right where the eye would be if we drew straight over, is where the ear will start. And the ear is a simple shape. Curves up, curves over, down, angles back in, and will end just slightly below the nose. The inner ear detail is very simple. Just a simple curve with another line set in to finish things off. So this will then help show us where the back of Iroh's hair is going to be as well. What we can do is come back up to the top of the head, and just past the middle of the hairline of the head, we will begin drawing the hair emerging from the side of his head. And it will curve down, and as it enters behind the ear, we'll have it swoop down a little bit to have a spike. We'll have it continue to curve down with a few spikes added in for good measure. And then this is where we'll stop it for the time being. Now, if you actually wanted to keep Iroh looking like he did in Season 2 and 3 after he and Zuko defected from the Fire Nation, this top of the head is where you would stop. This is how you would leave him for this part here. But if you want him to look like he's part of the Fire Nation still, then what we will do is come over from the middle of the head, you'll come over to about here, and you will draw a simple cylinder shape that makes him look like he's wearing a Boo the Monkey's hat. What you can then do, had to move that further up, what you can then do is come to the top of the shape, draw a line that angles slightly up to the right, curves around, and over to the side. And then to figure out where this ends here, you will draw a line that moves more or less straight up, curves out slightly to the left, to give the appearance of the hair not curling in on itself, and have the line curve down and back into the little hat, little hairband thing, with a few lines added in for texture and detail. This is how Iroh would look if you wanted him to still be part of the Fire Nation. Me personally, I like him more after they defected. So now that you've seen how to do that, I'm going to erase it. And I can now show you how to draw his beard like he has defected from the Fire Nation. And I can show you how to finish off the bottom part of him with his shoulders. All we're going to do is take this part of his beard and extend it further down to make it look like it's been growing out. Then it's a simple matter of having that connect up into one of the spikes that we have for the side of his beard. And doing the same on the other side. Now you don't have to draw this actually coming together in a point, because you can add a few spikes there to finish that off. Then what you can also do is take the sides of the hair and draw it slightly longer to give once again the idea that his hair he's been letting it grow out for probably the first time in a very long time. You can do much the same over here. Then it's a simple matter of taking what you've done in erasing out the part that you no longer need. And then the connection between his goatee part and the rest of his face becomes much less controlled and a little bit just more straight up and down. A little bit, make him look a little bit more bushy. With a few added details here for beard texture. Oh, forgot these. Then to finish the whole thing up, what we can do is come over to the right side here. And we will draw, starting from his beard down here, just a simple sloping line that swoops fairly decently downwards. We'll do much the same over here, only this side will start a little bit further up. Then we can finish his hair as it disappears into his shoulders. And then, since we're going to be seeing this part of him anyway, we will draw a line here and here to get the appearance of a robe that he's wearing. And then the only part that you'll actually see, went this whole time without seeing that I hadn't erased those yet. Shameful, absolutely shameful. I should be fired. We will draw a collar piece that extends back and over his shoulder area. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is that. That is Uncle Iroh all finished up. So I'm going to go ahead and give him a nice once over with some ink, clean him up, and then we'll come back for some final thoughts. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so as you can see, I've finished up the drawing of Uncle Iroh here. I left these parts here just to show you that I did move up the eye bags under his eyes just ever so slightly. I thought that this part ended up looking a little bit too far down for my taste. Just to let you see that, so that you could adjust yours if they need to be. But you can also see that I did a little quick time-lapse there of applying some shading. Nothing too crazy, just did a little bit of shading here and there for parts of his face with doing a light coating over for his beard and hair. And if you want a tutorial on how to do something like this, you just let me know. I just used a blending stump and my normal pencil that I was using. So that's it, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank you for sticking with me, those of you that have, for all this time that I was gone. I appreciate that you have been patient with me and waiting for me to come back. And it's because of you that I've decided to return. And for those of you that are new, thank you very much for coming and joining me for what might be your first video from me. Thank you very much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. There will be more drawing videos to come. And until then, I will see you all next time. Have yourselves a great day.